Hey yo guys, welcome back to Blessedarch, and today on this channel we are continuing our discussion about artificial intelligence in the field of architecture. Our guest today is Tim Fu, who currently works at Zaha Hadid Architects in the Code Cluster, or the Computational Design Research Group. We will talk a little bit about Tim's background, how he got to where he is, and then talk about how AI is being used in architecture and its future. Tim will also show us how he takes the AI renders and processes them, creating 3D models using Grasshopper and Rhino, and generating perfect architectural spaces conceptualized by AI. Now, in this video, we'll be discussing AI apps like Midjourney and Dalle 2. If you do not know what they are, I recommend you watch these two videos for some introduction. You will get a better understanding of these apps and then you can come back to this video. Now, the conversation with Tim is an interesting one, so stick around right till the end and let's get started. Hey Tim, welcome to the channel. I've been seeing your work for a while now using AI and creating so many great outputs, and also not just being limited to those renders but also creating things from that. I've seen you do that, and it had me really intrigued. So I really wanted to have you on the channel and sort of discuss not only your journey but also what impact AI can have. So welcome.
Thank you, Rishabh. Thanks so much. Such a pleasure as well to see you face the camera, because I used to watch your videos in the past, and it's great to see you more like on Zoom. So it's a pleasure for me as well. Thanks for having me.
So I want to jump right into our conversation today, and let's start with a little bit of your background. So when did you graduate from studying architecture, and where did you study?
Yeah, so I graduated in the year of 2015 in Toronto. So my school was called Ryerson University. And then from there were some programs within my undergraduate that kind of show me a more interesting side of architecture for myself. So there was a AA visiting school that I attended in Jordan. So that was the kind of like the first moment where I started seeing really creative and interesting ways that you can fuse technology and computational design into the architectural discourse and design. So from there, I really got hooked into architecture, because prior to that, I just kind of studied heads down on an exam paper. But then from after that point, I started to see the application of, what it can actually do in the broader spectrum of the newest technology and design. So from there, I got really interested. I started to attend more sort of programs that were outside of my school. I think I did the Paris exchange study at the ANSA La Villette, École nationale supérieure d'architecture de la Villette in Paris. So from there, I also studied upon different ways that architecture can be evolved into. And I decided to just keep pursuing this type of education, where from the more standardized Canadian system, we then kind of try to fuse it with other things outside in other countries. So I try to chase every opportunity I get to kind of travel around and absorb the different types of academia that's involved.
All right, so after you graduated, so I want to jump a little bit to 2017 is when you went to study at the AA in London. So could you talk about your experience there, and what value did studying at AA add to your skills as a designer?
Yeah, so in 2017, after, traveling all over the world, I decided one of my favorite places is Europe. And I mean, London is probably technically Europe, but the closest thing to it. And I applied all over the world. I've done applications in the States, as well as at different schools in Europe. And I've got accepted to, including things like Ivy League schools, but the one that got accepted me was AA, and I just like, jaw dropped. Like that was the very thing that I really wanted to go to, because it's linked to exactly what I'm interested in. So I applied to the Emergent Technologies program within AA, which is where as a master program where you study the material systems and fabrication process of basically using digital design and computational tools to both conceive the project as well as develop it through iterative process, as well as the fabrication process and rationalization of the geometry. So it's like a holistic computational process all the way up until the fabrication. And then we also get to build pavilions, like actual one-to-one physical models of the conceptions we have at the beginning. So I think that was a really cool experience to really get the hands-on experience going from the paper to the computer and all the way to the material and construction. So it gave a lot of experience for me of the entire process of construction.
Finally, let's come to Zaha Hadid Architects or ZHA. So you work in the code cluster at ZHA. So so tell us, what kind of stuff do you do there?
So yeah, I work at ZH Code, the computational cluster of Zaha Hadid. Work closely with Shajay Bhushan and all the guys there who are incredibly skilled and talented at particularly both design and the computational side. So that's exactly what I got into, that I was really into. So this particular field was extremely exciting for me. Over there at the office, as soon as I started, I was put into competition projects. I think I worked with one other member. We worked on the I think first project was the Douro Bridge in Porto, Portugal. It was competition. We didn't win. There were quite a few others, but at the same time, that was my first taste and experience at working on a competition. From there on, I also worked heavily on the Unicorn Island of Chengdu, China. So this was a huge master plan project. I think it's been a couple of years already. And this project has such a large scale. Within this cluster of team that works specifically on this project, like I was one of the only code members there, so I also help and aid in the computational design aspect. At some point, I became specialized in the parametric facade system of all of the towers. So a lot of the team members were doing different design work, but I will also take the design work and also do the computational geometric rationalization. We will basically also run different algorithms to test the ecological aspects, and finally use that to generate new geometry and simulate what it's like to have a final product that is basically just a 3D model at the beginning, but now it's parameterized with details and louvers and basically geometry that can be fabricated efficiently and ecologically. And that's basically the type of stuff we do. Yeah, just to optimize the facade systems and that type of things. So it's a good mix of design thinking, but also a good mix of computational uh, calculations.
All right, so now let's come from ZHA, what you do there, and your journey. Let's come to AI. So you've been using a lot of AI apps like Midjourney, Dali 2, and firstly, what actually made you gravitate towards them?
As a member of code, what we do is always trying to be up to date on all technologies. So when something like text prompting image generation technology comes up, that's something that is quite related to design in many ways. So for that very matter, I jumped on it a bit early. Not as early as some other folks on the Dali 2, but when Midjourney came out, I looked at people's work and seen how artistic the results are. So from that point, I decided that this can potentially be a useful tool in the design process. So that's when I decided to start experimenting.
So, do you think these tools have the power to change things in the field? Like, people have been generating a lot of images from it, and one of the things that you hear is like these are great renders, but this is just conceptual architecture, or people are just trying out new things. And would it have an impact in the field itself?
Yeah, that's a that's a big question. From me, I can speculate from my experience. From all my tests that I've done with this technology, I do see that, yeah, at some point there is some it's recycling a database of existing designs. So is that creativity? But then the database is right now like what 5 billion and it's gonna keep growing. So at some point it's a gray area because even as designers, I think we are also recycling ideas and mishmashing and innovating other than inventing, you know. So it's like a iterative process of combining different things and patterns together. So the AI is pretty much doing that. I think every version of AI as it develops becomes more and more improved in terms of both the aesthetics quality as well as the uh, conceptualization and understanding of spatial quality and three dimensionality. So as these things keep improving, I'm changing my opinion on it all the time. I see it as becoming more and more viable as something that can be implemented in the design process. And so for that, I'm currently quite almost shocked at how disruptive it is already. And I can only imagine and speculate how much more it will be. I mean, there is no doubt that it will be a disruptive technology. Right now, it's replacing, for example, I used to use Shutterstock and, these stock image websites for getting certain pictures and things that I need to composite Photoshop. And now I just generate it directly with DALI 2 API within Photoshop. So that process already saved me time and money. And the guys that are taking photos for stock photo, like they're going to be scrambling and some of us are going to be scrambling as well. So there is no doubt that AI is replacing what we're doing. We have to always adapt and shift our industry towards new technology. There's a lot of people denying that AI is not going to replace human in creativity. I'd say that's a gray area question. It will replace some aspects of the process of our creativity, but obviously we as the curators of the final product and we as the interface of controlling what results come and the receiver are humans as well. So I think for that matter, philosophically speaking, that we will always be relevant in this technology. But that being said, just looking back in history, AI is not new. AI has been here for a while, and as AI developed, it has already replaced many jobs, and there's no doubt that it's going to continue doing that.
First of all, there were so many things that you said within what you said right now. What you started off with is, when you said that is what we do as human beings also. You take in all the information that you have. You cannot design something like it's based on the collection of ideas that you've sort of gathered all of your life, like the heap of impression that you have had all your life. That is what is now working as your thinking process. And so first of all, that point is interesting, is that the AI is also just doing that. It's just that maybe everybody now has the access to the exact same process and not different mindset. But I think that might also just evolve as it just gets more and more complex, just based on the slightest of your word changes and something new comes up.
If I add
uh,
to that,
yeah.
yes, everyone has access to the billions of data, but we're talking billions of data and it's going to keep growing. Think, for example, everyone has access to a camera. And does that make everybody a photographer? No. The world is your
True.
oyster and you are in control. You are curating the results. And for me, through my experiences, both doing it myself and teaching the students at the parametric architecture tutorial, what I've learned is you can teach the tools and teach how to use it to your best of your abilities. But what I see is everybody taking it to their own direction because it's such a versatile tool that you can manipulate and control. Even more than a camera, I'd say, because yeah, it's easy to type some text. It's also easy to click a button and get a picture.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should worry about that. it's just the fact that I see so many people getting into AI, and just the people with the most artistic sensibilities that can show things at the top level. So just from that, I see, yeah, AI is an artistic medium. It's definitely a creative tool, and it's competitive. You will see
Yeah.
everybody generating. Right now, I know we're being polluted with AI images on Instagram. There's no doubt about that. But of course, everybody gets a different level of success from it because of their own ability to have the artistic eye to curate and sharpen the composition. And it's the same process what you do with photography. So from that, I
True.
see that I'm not really worried about it as a tool to generate whatever you want, because we should give the tool to everybody. We should democratize the whole system that everybody can then use. So let's see, perhaps now, it's a good thing where people in developing countries don't need a computer, a heavy intensive computer with high GPU in order to produce, industrial, industry standard renders. But what they can do is type a bunch of text in a cloud server, and now they can compete with someone across the world in a professional office. So I think the democratization of what AI can do to people in the design process can be quite disruptive for the industry as a whole, but generally in a good way.
What you also said, I was watching a YouTube video where this YouTuber, she had invited one of her artist friend, and both of them were sort of, using DALI 2 together to create certain outputs, and you could clearly see the artist doing a much better job, even though it was a tool both of them were using for the first time. But again, it's about how you use the tool that's in your hand.
Precisely, you got it. Yeah, it's a tool. It's no more
Yeah.
than that. You're the artist. You control.
And when you said previously, talking about AI replacing, like AI has been here for a while, and AI replacing a lot of jobs. I think this is one of the things Neil Leach, Neil Leach.
Yeah, of course.
Uh,
I've
yeah,
spoke with him in Digital Futures. I gave a talk there as well with a bunch of other AI artists.
he is still very, very insistent. I always tell him, listen, it's years away before this might happen. But he always insists, it might not be as far away as you think that AI might just replace architects.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was him that coined the term AI Spring, which is all this technology of
Yeah,
AI that's really flourishing this year alone. Yeah,
true.
Imogen, Dali 2, and then you had Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. All these things all sprung up, and it's really progressing at such an alarming rate. Just from the moment that I started using Midjourney to where it is now, within the 2-3 months, I've seen the version 3 and then the test P version and then version 4. It's so drastically different. Like I feel we're really riding the Moore's law of AI technology at the moment. So it's really exponential, and it's really frightening where it can go. I can only speculate.
Yeah, are we like celebrating what might just obliterate us? And yeah,
It's gonna obliterate what we do in the industry and
yeah,
force us to change to something else,
true.
but hopefully for the better. Uh,
Yeah.
we can only speculate.
By the way, do you at present have you been using like at Code or at ZHA using Midjourney or DALI to sort of conceptualize for certain projects or use it in any context whatsoever?
Yeah, so I mean, this is an early phase of this technology, and in our industry, we're always trying to like test the waters. So far, Shajay has kind of tasked me to really do more of this research as well. Patrick himself had voiced his interest for this technology. I myself have tried, doing mood boards for concept projects. So that's the extent of, I think, how applicable that I can implicate this technology within the industry at the moment. From my own research, and I've tried to fully conceptualize a project and then do the rationalization on my end using the skill sets that I have to determine the pixels, what they are in 3 dimensions, and try to understand the rule and rationalize, um, create panelization process, and then ultimately think about the fabrication process. So it's a very new field of trying to use AI to produce something real. But this is an ongoing research, and we're just at the beginning of it.
Okay, guys, so I wanted to take a quick break because videos like these are possible because of sponsors. And the sponsor for this video is Skillshare. Now, Skillshare is a platform that helps you upskill. Basically, it has a selection of courses from amazing instructors around the world which covers so many topics. As for designers and architects, they have classes on graphic design, logo creation, animation, and many more. I even came across Steven Rubio's course called Architectural Digital Collage. Now we know Steven and he does some amazing work. In this course, he tells you exactly how to create digital collages like this. There are also many other classes, but this is the one I recommend you start with. And by the way, all of this is completely free. The first 1,000 people that click on the link in the description get access to the whole Skillshare catalog completely free for a month. So do check them out, and now let's get back to our discussion. Can you, with one of your works, explain, how exactly you start with AI and then evolve your design through that? Because as I understand, for you, it's not just generating those renders, but then also evolving from those initial renders.
Yeah, so I have the newest one, like for example, I got this one where this image uh come to become this and that. So that's one of them. And then I have this parametric timber one that I showed for my PA course. And this one is definitely, I think, the most refined. So that's the original, right?
Yeah.
And then you do the sub D of this, right?
Okay.
So you model that manually. And then we have, after the modeling is done, um, you bring it into Grasshopper, in which you do this stuff. So this was then modeled in Grasshopper. And
Ah,
then you can see this is the final render. Then you compare that to the original. It's definitely not a simple process to try to get as close as possible
true.
because you have to take stuff that don't make sense and then find the geometry that does make sense.
Yeah.
So that's that.
But it's quite interesting.
Yeah, the whole process is super interesting of basically interpreting the 2D into 3D, and you have to do a lot of
Yeah.
thinking on your own end. But you see like the way I've done this type of interweaving timber
Yeah.
because this is what the 3D, I mean the Midjourney kind of is hinting on without explicitly telling
Yeah.
you what this is a bit of a mess, right? So then you take that and then you really, really like bring it into architectonic and order.
Do
Horrible.
you like try and stick to the original image as much as you can?
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
do you just also go
This
off like
is
that doesn't make sense, so I'll just do something else now?
to the best of my abilities, right? Because that's the whole point is to try to rationalize uh an AI design. So that's the
Hmm.
goal. But of course, when things are just woo like this, you see,
Yeah.
fluttery, you kind of then have to put into your own interpretation. Like this stuff, like what is this? There is pretty much no way you do this parametrically unless you really do quirky things. I mean, this is only a 1 day script. If I did this for
Yeah.
a week, I would perhaps get closer to this. But the concept is that you do have to interpret things and then regularize it.
Like what you get from Midjourney and Dali is more of visuals. It's pure visuals. And then maybe if you right now are just playing around with it, in software, so it doesn't matter as much. But maybe if you want to fabricate it, there would be a lot of things that you might have to change, because of the realities of everything.
Yes, even on the prompting side, you can start learning how to prompt the geometry more realistically that it makes
Ah,
sense. So even at the early end of the process, you can start pushing it towards that direction. And that's what basically Midjourney has developed from version 3 to version 4 is that they've improved that process. And if you see, my Instagram profile, the early phases of the stuff that I've done, like my goal has been the same throughout to try to rationalize geometry and make things look realistic in Midjourney as much as possible. But
yeah.
throughout the development, the technology got better. My goal stayed the same, but the technology got better. So you can see from my Instagram the sort of evolution of that technology. I think it's really interesting to be able to start the whole conception from scratch just as an idea in your head and then generate it through text. But that process also requires you to sort of conceptualize the beginning, the composition, the materiality, what you want to bring into existence. So I think there's already a lot of element of control right at the very beginning. And then there's also using image prompts. There's using other inputs. You could sketch. You could do some things that actually is, preconceived in your head and try to realize that with materials. So there's multiple ways that you try to control your output as much as possible. And obviously it's not perfect as well. So once the Midjourney image comes out, you can also do a lot of post processing. That's also where DALL-E 2 comes in with the editing of the image. You can expand it, you can fill certain areas. If you see a furniture you don't like, you can replace it with another furniture by erasing it and telling DALL-E to prompt it within that image itself. So there is also an iterative process that you can obtain from using multiple AIs at the same time. So that process is kind of like what I've been trying to streamline and try to teach. This process then evolves into the final image that you can then, for example, give to the client. And then with that final image, you then conceptualize it in your head, the three-dimensional configurations. And from there, you bring it into Rhino and Grasshopper, for example, where I can use my specialized tool sets to use algorithmic and parametric design to rationalize the geometry and create the 3D geometry. And then finally, of course, you can bring that into the fabrication process and finish the project. So I see that it's a whole streamline of things that we are trying to bring together. But it's an ongoing research as well from my end and from Zaha Hadid and from everybody else. I know other offices are also jumping into this as well, as I have friends in other big offices. And I think the entire industry is now looking at this and taking it very seriously, what AI technology can do.
Yeah, I think especially in the last few months, a lot more people, like, I remember when it came out, people were like not taking it as seriously, playing around with it. But I feel like over the last few months, a lot more people have just gotten on board and started to use the tool really, and explore.
Yeah, I mean, to say to that, a lot of people were resistant because they saw the very early images of what AI did at that time. And I say
Yeah,
is that we cannot just look at the result at the moment and then dismiss it. I think
true.
we have to be worried. We have to look to the future and we have to imagine within such a short development how much it has already achieved, how much more it can achieve. Photorealism, it's already nearly there. They're now doing AI videos as well with the Meta AI and things like that. Film industry, watch out as well. I think
Yeah.
rendering industry, all these industries that are creating visuals, including ourselves, we have to formulate a plan to either adapt with it
Yeah.
or do something else because it is here to stay and it is growing. It's absolutely cataclysmic what it does to the industry.
All right. So, that was actually very, very interesting to hear, and maybe we can do, hopefully, we can do more such conversations on AI, and also to the people watching. I also wanted to get you guys involved, like what you thought about everything we spoke. If you have any questions, comments, in the comments below, and I would love to have you as well, Tim, just being in the comments and discussing stuff.
It is such a pleasure for me. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah,
All right. So thank you so much, Tim, for taking out the time.
thank you. It's a pleasure.
And that was it, you guys. That was my discussion with Tim. Now, the question that comes up from this video is, will AI replace architects in the future, or will it remain a tool which architects use? I want to know your thoughts, and let's discuss in the comments below. Now, the conversation that you just saw was edited down, which means there were more parts of this conversation which were very interesting, but I could not put them into this video because it was just making the video a little too long. But nevertheless, these conversations were also very, very interesting. Let me give you a glimpse. You worked as a freelance consultant for Big or Back Angles Group for a few months. So, talk to me about what kind of work did that involve?
I got in contact with a professor of Harvard who has his office. His name is George Legendre. We entered a competition in Dubai for the Dubai Creek Harbor Footbridge, and there we won that project. Just me and him at the beginning. I've also had my own sort of design digital workshop course in Harvard where we taught students about computational design and parametric thinking.
It was also interesting to read because I did not know companies also hired like freelance designers. Like I knew of other consultants, but I did not know like you could also just companies would also just look for freelance designers to work with for a few months. Now, if you want to watch the rest of this conversation, the glimpse of which you just saw, you can actually find that video on Patreon. You can find the link to my Patreon page in the description below and do go and check it out. Also, if you like the conversations I have and the content that I create on this channel, you can help support it. There are actually 4 ways. The first 3 are Patreon, channel memberships, and PayPal. The links for all 3 are in the description below. The fourth and the newest way is called Super Thanks. Basically, you can help support a particular video as shown on the screen, and this will let me know that you want me to make more such content. So if you like the discussion we had here, do consider supporting. Before I go, these are the people who are currently supporting the channel through Patreon and channel memberships, and I would like to express my gratitude for all of them. If you want to use the AI app Midjourney, you can do so on the Blessedarch Discord server, the link for which you can find in the description below. And that was it. I will see you guys soon with more such content. Until then, bye bye.